Trucks is a new family film that was developed by Nickelodeon, Paramount Pictures, and a 4-year-old. This movie's about a guy named Trip, played by Lucas Till, who is somehow still in high school even though he looks like he's 30. And one day while he's working at a junkyard, a monster that he names Creech shows up, and he likes hiding in trucks, he's drinking oil. But then when this organization comes to take this monster away, Trip decides, you know what, I'm not gonna let you take him. They form a little relationship, they get Jane Levy involved for some reason, and they go on an adventure to save the creature's parents and junk. Okay, everyone expected this thing to be bad. Like, there's no denying that. As soon as that trailer came out, everyone was like, holy crap, this looks like it's the worst thing ever made. What was this, made by a 4-year-old? Technically, yes. There are some bad movies where I'm like, the behind-the-scenes documentary of this film would be a much better film to watch, and this is one of those instances, because the president of Paramount at the time, before he lost his job because of this movie, let his 4-year-old give him a movie idea, and then he started developing it at Paramount, and then lost $100 million on it, got fired, got other people fired for it. So hopefully that 4-year-old was sent away to some orphanage for that. So going into this movie, I was expecting the worst of the worst, folks, because that trailer did not do this movie any favors, and that history of how it was made definitely didn't do anything. But I will say, this isn't the worst thing ever made. A lot of people are trying to pass it off like that, and it really isn't. However, it is pretty terrible. I will give this movie this, though. Creech is the best part about this. Whenever he shows up, I was delighted to see him, honestly. Even though he is an ugly creature, the CGI for it does look very good, and that's another one of my pros. The CGI, at times, looks pretty good. There are some times, though, where, like, his eyeball pops out of the car, and it just kind of sticks out. And there's also a scene you've seen in the trailers where they're colliding down on the mountains, grabbing their wheels. But for the most part, the visual effects did look somewhat good. Let's get into the bad now, because there's a lot. As I mentioned, Creech was a very delightful part of this film. However, the very obvious ripoff of E.T. with his relationship with Trip, that didn't work because Lucas Till isn't even trying in this movie. And I like Lucas Till, Havoc and X-Men, I like him a lot, but Jesus Christ, him in this movie is just so unconvincing, especially because of his age. He's 25-ish, somewhere around that time, and a little bit younger when they filmed this movie back in 2014, but still, he was around 20 when they were making this movie back then, and he's in high school, apparently, and he must be a senior that was held back for many years because he is too old. Now, a lot of movies that are taking place in high school have people that are obviously not teenagers, but usually they surround this character that's obviously not a teenager with other people who are obviously not teenagers, and this guy is on a bus, and he's surrounded by people that actually look like high schoolers. They look like someone like me on the bus. And then later on, he's riding his bike to school, and this little fat friend of his comes up and is talking to him, and I'm like, this guy is more convincing of a high schooler. They should not have put him next to Lucas Till. And they also have the plot that most teenagers in movies have where, oh, the police don't believe me, but he's too old for that. He really is too old to be going around like, oh, but he was just here! You gotta believe me, guys! And there's even some drama that he has with his father that is just really weird to put into a family film. Like, there's a scene where he's legit crying in his truck about it, and I'm just like, this seems a little too deep for a family film. The best part, though, is that father storyline doesn't really go anywhere. I thought, oh, so is the father gonna, like, come back into his life later on in the movie, maybe redeem himself? No, he just kind of disappears. And even the stepfather that Lucas Till has in this movie, it seems like this is gonna be an impactful thing, and it should be, because that character actually does become important instead of his real dad. But when this stepdad, who happens to be the sheriff, does something that's kind of important, you're just like, this feels really unmotivated. I have no idea why you're still here. And I also have no idea why Jane Levy's character is so obsessed with Lucas Till. Now, I like Jane Levy as an actress, Evil Dead Remake and Don't Breathe. She is really good. And in this movie, you can tell she's trying, she's really adorable, but her character is extremely pathetic. Trip makes it very obvious that whenever she tries to talk to him, that he doesn't want her around, tries to get away from her, tries to literally ignores her at one point, but yet she's still hanging around him, constantly wants to talk to him. It's like, girl, I would leave if I were you. Just leave him here. But no, he's so attractive. Have you seen Lucas Till? He's like the hottest MacGyver we've ever had. I've gotta hang around him because he's the hot guy. We're gonna have a forced relationship in the last 20 minutes of the movie, even though he's been, like, really annoyed by me, like, throughout the first hour. And what I'm saying is true. They do that thing where they're not in a relationship for the first hour, but then they do that thing near the end where Trip finally realizes, hey, you're kinda hot. It's like, this doesn't feel real. You guys don't work well together at all. And speaking of acting, Rob Lowe in this movie, he is the villain, I guess, because he doesn't really get involved too much in the plot. He just kinda shows up and is the villain, because he just is, and he has an accent that sounds terrible. I don't know why he had that accent. And oh my god, Danny Glover shows up in this movie for like 3 minutes in total, and he's in a wheelchair. It's not really made a big deal that he's in a wheelchair. It's just really odd seeing a guy like Danny Glover who can actually walk be in a wheelchair, and then they offer like no backstory to it, I guess. But the main issue I have is, like, don't get why Danny Glover decided to do this. Maybe he needed to buy a new house or something. And also I noticed the bounty hunter character in this movie. I've noticed him in other movies before, and I was like, what? Where do I recognize this guy? What? And I remembered, oh, he was that officer guy in Jack Reacher, Never Go Back. And not only that, he's the guy talking to Sully in that one scene in Sully. So he went from Sully to Jack Reacher to monster trucks. Sully, Jack Reacher, monster truck. And in that one scene he was in Sully, pretty good. Hopefully he doesn't waste his career doing nothing but bullcrap like Jack Reacher and especially monster trucks. The action scenes are really dumb in this film. None of them are really exciting. A lot of them are really odd because our heroes are causing a lot of collateral damage, and it seems like they're killing people at some point. Like in the beginning of the movie, it seems like, oh, that could have led to a death, but then later on in the movie, it's like, okay, I don't see how anyone could have survived that. You are murderers now? I don't know if I can root for you. And oh my god, one action scene in this movie has legit the best use of the Wilhelm scream I have ever seen in my entire life. When it happened, I was like the guy from Troll 2. Oh my god! And of course, the obvious one, the script, is pretty lazy in this film. And I'm not just talking about dialogue-wise, I mean overall story-wise. Near the end of the movie when they're wrapping stuff up, I was confused. It just seemed like it was ending way too quickly. Stuff that I was expecting to kind of happen, it just kind of had a rushed ending, and I was like, but I thought this was... Never mind. Overall, Monster Trucks, it's really bad. Obviously. Like, the acting is not good, the story is terrible, and the action scenes aren't even fun. But some of the visuals, for the most part, did look pretty impressive, and the creature Creech is easily the best character in this movie, even though he just kind of makes noises. And at one part he is drunk driving because they give him oil that's from a gas station, and they're like, oh, it's got chemicals in it, and he just starts acting nuts. That was still better than most of the other characters in this film, so I'm gonna give Monster Trucks a D. It's not the worst movie of all time. That trailer made it look like it, but it really isn't. That being said, though, it is a pretty stupid movie, one that I would not recommend. In fact, the studio even said that this was supposed to be a kids' film franchise that was equivalent to like the Transformers movies, and that totally made sense. This movie feels like E.T. and Transformers had a really ugly love child. But since this movie bombed horrendously, there's no need to worry about that franchise. There's no way, man. Have you seen its box office results? In fact, before the movie even came out, they already stated, yeah, we're gonna lose money on this. But guys, if you've seen Monster Trucks, leave in the comments below of what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.